Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Sam Clark and I'm the Academic Liaison and Outreach Coordinator at Heriot-Watt University. So welcome to this event this evening. We're going to be talking about college to university transitions and specifically civil engineering at Heriot-Watt. So just before we start, a couple of things to mention. Firstly, we're going to be recording this session and it will go up on the web pages afterwards, but just to note, it is just what's on the screen that is recorded. And secondly, if you would like to ask questions throughout the event, you can use the chat function. If you type in your question, that question will go just to our event moderators. So other audience members won't be able to see your question. So don't worry if you're going to ask something that you think is a little bit silly, because there's no question too great or too small. If you type your question in, then we will be able to read that and hopefully answer it as we go through. So tonight it's not just me that is talking this evening. We're also joined by Professor Ian Smith, who's an Associate Professor in Civil Engineering, and he'll be able to tell us more about specifically the civil engineering courses at Heriot-Watt. We're also joined by some students who are studying civil engineering with us, who will be able to give their insights about what it was like to join the university. We're also joined tonight by Rachel Whittington, who's a learning advisor and liaison librarian. And Rachel's going to be talking about that journey from college to university and the kind of changes in university sort of learning and studying and the support that is there to help you go from one to the next. And if Ian and Rachel and the students have inspired you to want to apply to come and do civil engineering at Heriot-Watt, then Pat Reid will join us at the end. Pat is a college's and wider access officer, and Pat will be able to go through the specifics about UCAS and entry requirements. All right, so what we're going to cover, as I said, I'll go through an introduction to Heriot-Watt and a little bit about our teaching and learning. I'll pass on to Ian to go into more specifics about civil engineering, and we'll hopefully speak to some students. We'll then pass over to Rachel to do the study skills and Pat to do the entry requirements and how to apply. And like I said, if you type the questions in throughout the event, we'll come to questions at various points, and we'll also have a question and answer at the end. So let's get started. So Heriot-Watt University, a little bit about us. So Heriot-Watt was established in 1821, so it's a very well established university, an old university that has really specialist links with industry. But if you went to one of our campuses, you might not know that, because the campuses are really quite nice, and we have lots of really state-of-the-art facilities available. So even though it's a well-established university, it's an old university, you actually don't really feel that when you're in the grounds, because we have such fantastic space and fantastic facilities. It's got these really super industry links, which is of course great if you want to pursue civil engineering in the future, because we've got the company links. We have over 30,000 students worldwide, so a really diverse cohort of students. They come from lots of different countries, lots of different cultures, lots of different backgrounds, and it's a really great way to kind of meet people from all over the world. Heriot-Watt has an excellent graduate prospects. So we are one of the top universities in Scotland for starting salaries. So if you come to us and study with us, and then you graduate and you go into the world of employment, Heriot-Watt graduates are getting the sort of top salaries, starting salaries. So it's a really good university to give you a sound basis for your career. We have over 100 partner institutes around the world, so lots of connections, and we have 5 purpose-built campuses. So this slide will show us where our campuses are. So we have a small postgraduate campus based in Orkney. We have a textiles and designs campus in Galashiels in the Borders, and our main UK-based campus is in Edinburgh, and that's where the civil engineering campus is based. We also have campuses in Dubai and Malaysia, so Heriot-Watt University is really truly global. We've got these connections right across the 5 campuses, and of course all the institutes, partnerships that we have across the world. I won't go into the civil engineering specifically because, of course, Ian and our students can do that more, but to just touch on it briefly, civil engineering is part of the School of Energy, Geoscience, Infrastructure and Society, which is a bit of a mouthful, so it's known as AEGIS. And there are a few different options, so you can study the B.Eng or the M.Eng in civil engineering, or the same in structural engineering. And these courses are accredited for the purpose, so depending on what level you're at, either partially at the B.Eng or fully at the M.Eng, and they meet the requirements for registration for chartered engineering. So if you'd like to go into chartered engineering in the future, this is a good place to get that starting off point. Excuse me. So our teaching at Heriot-Watt might be a little bit different from what you've experienced previously. We have 2 10-week terms, so you get a big holiday in the summer and a big holiday at Christmas, and then the 2 terms in between. The contact hours vary depending on what course you're studying. So again, hopefully Ian would be able to touch a little bit on that later. We have a range of teaching styles and environments, including our virtual learning environment, Vision. So that's incredibly important at the moment, of course, because we are running a blended approach, which means that some courses and some teaching is done on campus, but a lot is done through our virtual learning environment, and that can be done from anywhere in the world. We have a My HW student portal app, and that is like a one-stop shop for all of your student needs. So it can be quite daunting when you first come to the university. You don't know where anything is. You might want the library or IT or the union. So having everything in one place in an app that you can just bring up is actually really handy. And like I said, there's a range of different styles of teaching. So you could have lectures, which are large groups kind of watching people do things, or tutorials, seminars, workshops, labs. They tend to be smaller groups where it's much more sort of hands-on. And again, I won't go into this in too much detail because Ian is our expert here, but this is just some of the facilities that we have for civil engineering at Heriot-Watt. And in the bottom right, you can see there's a group on a site visit as well. So lots of different opportunities and lots of exciting kit that hopefully Ian will be able to touch on later. In terms of learning at the university, it is much less directed than potentially you might have had before. So you might have, 2 or 3 hours of contact time, but that doesn't mean that you're only going to do 2 or 3 hours work in the week. And Rachel will be able to touch on this a little bit later. But really, the idea is that you're responsible for your own learning, and that can be quite daunting if you've never done that before. But as Rachel will explain, there's lots of services, lots of support there to help you transition from the style of learning at college to the style of learning at university. As I said before, it is absolutely a global university, and we have a huge range of opportunities available to study and work abroad. Now, a lot of universities offer this for their languages students. So if you take French, you could go to a French-speaking country and do a year abroad. But at Heriot-Watt, we offer it wider, so lots of different students can be involved. And you can take part in our inter-campus transfer or exchanges with partner institutions. And even if you don't actually go and live or visit these campuses or places, quite often you can still work with people on projects from those places. So it is really connected, and you do get to meet such a diverse group of people from all over the world, which is pretty cool. Well-being is, of course, super important, especially at the moment. So at Heriot-Watt, you'll be offered a personal tutor, which is someone to help you through your journey. There's counselling services, careers and graduate futures, which is all about what happens after university and getting those high starting salaries. The disability service is an important one. So if anyone in the audience is using the disability service currently at college, then when you apply, either on your UCAS, you could let us know, or you can let us know by emailing us, and Pat will give you the details at the end. But really, so that's things like if you have a scribe or you need extra time in exams or anything like that, any support that you currently get, don't worry that you're going to lose that if you come to university, because quite often we can match it. So when you come, you'll get the same sort of support that you're used to. Student success advisors are another really good thing, because they are people who have been through student life very recently. So rather than having a sort of mentor or a contact who hasn't been a student for the last 40 years and can't remember what it was even like to be a student or be at university, students success advisors are people who have done it in the last few years. So they've experienced everything and it's really fresh in their mind and they can help support you. We also have doctors and a dentist on campus, and also a multi-faith chaplaincy. The other thing that Heriot-Watt is big on is, of course, sport. And we have our ORIAM Centre, which is Scotland's Sports Performance Centre in the Edinburgh campus. It's got over 30 sports clubs, it's got 70 fitness classes, top of the range facilities. And it doesn't matter if you are a professional athlete or if you're just someone who would like to do some sport and you know, get fit and meet some people and try some new things. There are lots of different options for all abilities, so it's a really cool thing to get fit and meet new people and do sport if that's what you're interested in. Finally, just going to talk a little bit about accommodation. So Heriot-Watt have some options for accommodation both on and off campus. We have self-catered blocks, all sorts of types of accommodation. And the one thing to note is we have accommodation guarantee. So where other universities might offer accommodation guarantee in the first year of the degree programme, Heriot-Watt is slightly different because we offer an accommodation guarantee in your first year at the university. So where that's really key is if you're studying an HNC or an HND and you're thinking about coming to Heriot-Watt and joining in either second or third year in the degree programme, then we will offer you an accommodation guarantee in your first year. So that's really cool if you're coming to join in second or third year, and it's a little bit different from some of the other universities, sets us apart. And of course, there's lots of different options with accommodation, and there's more information about that on our website as well. Okay, so that's enough from me about the sort of general university. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass over to Professor Ian Smith, who's going to give us some more specific information about civil engineering and the sort of facilities and courses and try and inspire you to want to come and study civil engineering with us at Heriot-Watt. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my slides now, and hopefully we can pass over to Ian.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam, and hopefully everybody can see and hear me okay. And like Sam, I'm going to share my screen and run a few slides, and hopefully you can see my presentation okay. I'm just getting it sorted at my end. Okay, yeah, so thank you very much, Sam, for the introduction there. My name is Ian Smith, as Sam told you. I'm a Professor of Geotechnical Engineering at the university. I'm also the admissions tutor for the civil and structural engineering programmes. I'll talk for about 10-12 minutes or so. A lot of what I've said, Sam's actually covered, and I agree with you entirely, Sam, so that was a bit of a relief. My presentation will dovetail nicely with yours. So what we have are two programmes in essence. We've got a programme in civil engineering and we've got a programme in structural engineering. Each of these goes to both B-Eng and then up to M-Eng level. Typically 4-year long for a B-Eng honours course, 5-year long for an M-Eng course, but of course coming from a college you would qualify for advanced entry, and I'll explain the difference between B-Eng and M-Eng as we go through the presentation. just a little bit of recap actually on some of the stuff that Sam told us there, but specifically to civil engineering about our teaching methods. We have a strong emphasis on design right from the outset of your degree. You'll notice that we cover a lot of structural engineering, structural design, highway design, transportation design, water network design, geotechnical design, my own area, and that's all about making sure that as a qualified graduate engineer you're capable of slotting into an existing design team, and that's all about helping your employability. And again, Sam had mentioned about the great employability prospects that exist through a Heriot-Watt degree. It's very much the case with the civil engineering degree. You will spend quite a bit of time in laboratories. Civil engineering is a very practical based subject. It does involve a lot of maths and theory, and all of that stuff is covered in the classrooms and the lecture theatres. But to bring that to life, sometimes we take you into the laboratories and you can see the real practical application from a lot of the theoretical subjects that we've covered. So whether that be around, it's usually around different materials, to be honest, whether it's around concrete or steel or water or soil, whatever it might be, but a lot of that practical hands-on work in the laboratories. Sometimes you go into the labs as an entire class, but you go in groups, but everybody in the class will go through the lab to do the same sort of experiment. Or sometimes, for example, in year 4 on your dissertation, you might be doing some laboratory work as an individual, and that's very much based on what experiments you would require to do in order to satisfy the needs of your dissertation. So you could be in a small group or you could be an individual in a lab. For health and safety reasons, I should state that you're never allowed in the laboratory unaccompanied. There will always be a member of staff or a research student in the laboratory with you at the same time. And of course, computer labs as well. We use a lot of software, specialized software for our design and our analysis work. So you'll spend a lot of time in computer labs. Sam had mentioned site visits. Yes, we do take the students out onto quite a number of site visits. Again, that's what civil engineering is. We can only do so much in the classroom, but let's take you out onto a construction site so you can really get a feel for some of the big projects. And we often invite our friends from industry to come into the university to give talks on specific projects to really try and put that theory into context. Sam had also mentioned about our lab facilities. They are absolutely state-of-the-art. We're a very successful research university, and on the back of that research work, we have some quite world-leading facilities, whether it be on high-speed rail, structural engineering, water engineering, whatever the subject area is. We do have some extraordinary facilities. You will get to benefit from using these facilities for some of your simple earlier year labs in year 2 or 3. We'll do some labs using some of this equipment. And again, in the dissertation work, if you choose to do a dissertation, for example, in maybe an offshore wind farm or something, you might be going on into the wave tank along with maybe a PhD student to do some monitoring of oscillations or something of a wind turbine. So we've got these great facilities, and normally I would be speaking to you on campus and I'd be walking you around and showing you these facilities on campus. I'm unable to do that during a pandemic, of course, but there are virtual tours available of all of our facilities on the web, so I would encourage you to have a look at those at some point if you are able to. I'll just quickly go through the structure of our BEng programs. You're college students, so you wouldn't be coming into year 1, but if you look at year 1 subjects there, you'll kind of see that that maps across quite neatly to the first year of an HN, whether that's an HNC, and year 2, by the time you put these 2 years together, these are the first 2 years of our degree, they more or less map onto what you've covered at college, okay? If you're completing an HNC and planning to join us, you would join us into year 2. If you're completing an HND, you would be joining us in year 3. Just to sort of explain the pictorial representation of this diagram, what we've got here, in each semester we offer 4 modules, or courses is the Heriot-Watt word. We use the word courses. 4 courses per semester. You would study first 4 subjects, for example, civil engineering materials, stress analysis, design studies, statistics for science, and then once those 4 subjects are finished at the end of semester 1, you'd move into semester 2 and you'd do a fresh 4 subjects. Okay, so 4 subjects at the one time. Year 3 starts to introduce more of the specialised subject areas. Okay, so the calculations, if you like, get a little bit more advanced, and the design processes get a little bit more advanced. And then by the time we get into year 4, this is what we would call the bachelor year. And if you look at the diagram now, you'll see there's some options, and that's intentional. So we allow you to choose subjects that interest you, because at that point you're starting to think about your career. Do you want to be a civil engineer, a water engineer, a highway engineer, a geotechnical engineer, structural engineer? You choose the options that suit you best, and that also applies to your dissertation project as well. So you would choose the dissertation. As you can see from the diagram, it's a year-long project. It's an individual project. You work on your own, but under the direction and supervision of an academic member of staff on a topic that takes your fancy. Okay, so this allows you to really start to flavour the degree to what you want it to be in anticipation of your graduation. Students that leave at the end of year 4 will have the honours Bachelor of Engineering, perfectly acceptable qualification. A lot of contractors, so the Balfour Beatties and these sorts of companies, Morrison's and these companies that build things, they look for a lot of BEng graduates. But some students will choose to stay on to year 5. And that's the MEng year, the Master of Engineering year. And students that tend to do an MEng degree would tend to, in general, go into design work. So be working with companies like Arups or Jacobs or WSP, designing things, designing bridges or structures or highways, whatever it may be. And you can see straight away there, year 5, it's just about all options. So you really start to choose your individual subjects to make the degree your own. Should have mentioned in 4th year, again in 5th year, this is a sort of professional design project. That's where you'll do a design project under the leadership of people from industry. So our friends from industry will come in to help us and to guide you. What we kind of do, our overall aim, I guess, is to make you employable. We want you to be useful to the companies on day 1, the day after you leave Heriot-Watt. So what we do is we educate you, of course we educate you, but we also train you as well. So you'll be equipped with the practical skills, the software skills that are required. And all of that is brought about through all these sort of key points here. So there will be lectures, but there's a lot of labs, a lot of workshops. We will get people from industry coming in to give guest presentations. You will go out on the site visits. You'll work on group projects. You'll be supported through all of your studies. And of course, I couldn't really talk about education without mentioning at least assessments, whole range of assessments. Yeah, I'm afraid there will be exams, but there are also coursework submission, laboratory reports, and the dissertation. So your marks come together from a whole range of things. Sam had spoken about contact hours. Typically, we are expecting contact about 4 to 6 hours in the early years of the degree per course per week. Remember, there are 4 courses in a semester, so you can do the arithmetic. Typically, the contact time is about 24 hours in the early years. That starts to reduce, but what we expect, it reduces through later years. What we expect you as a student to do in order to really achieve the maximum best degree you possibly can get is to do about the same number of hours per week self-study. Okay. About transition, and I know I'm going to pass over to some of our students currently, and they'll tell you exactly what it is like going from college to university. But what I've noticed in my many years of teaching at university is that most college students just transition. There's without any difficulties. You will notice the subject matter goes much deeper at a university than the subject you've covered at college. And the methods of assessment are more rigorous, the examinations and things like that. But what I have noticed, and this must be good news, is that those students that come to university having started at college are usually the most highly employable by industry. You seem to have a much greater round of experience of attributes to offer companies. So employment prospects are good. I'll not dwell on the site visits. We take our students out on various site visits. You're possibly all from Lothian and Borders region, so you probably know these structures over the Forth. So we take our students out to visit, whether it be transport infrastructure or construction sites, modular off-site constructions, another big developing area in civil engineering. So you'll get to visit all of these facilities, different various sites. We also offer our students, we're only one of 2 universities in Scotland to offer students to go to the Constructionarium. It's a 1-week long course. It's optional, where you can learn a lot of site skills, led by a team of engineers who are also teachers at this site, and they'll teach you'll learn all the practical skills. Some of them there will be a development on some of the stuff you covered at college. So handling materials, health and safety, working at height, working in teams, all that sort of stuff. So that's a very popular week. The students that go in that love it. It gets better. By the time you get into year 5, there's the option to go over to Barcelona for a week as well, for a study tour to Barcelona to have a look at construction beyond the UK. So that's in 5th year. We work with many companies. Just a snapshot of the companies we work with. The companies do 2 things for us. They advise us on course content, so we make sure everything we are teaching is relevant and helps to produce confident and employable graduates. And the second thing that these companies do is they employ our graduates. Okay, so they take graduates on after the degree, and they also offer summer placements. So we work with a range of companies, a range of industry links. Sam had mentioned actually the degrees were accredited. These are the professional bodies that accredit our civil engineering degrees. What this means, this is like a badge of quality. These 4 institutions, they come into the university once every 5 years. They check everything that we're doing meets a certain standard, and at Heriot-Watt they do. So what that means is our Bachelor of Engineering degree is accredited. So graduates of the BEng degree can go on to become an incorporated engineer, and graduates of the MEng degree can train after university to become a chartered engineer. So that's an important thing. That's an important slide, actually. In terms of the entry qualifications, if you run an HNC, we would take you into year 2 as long as you get an A in the graded unit. And for year 3 entry, we'd be looking for you to complete the HND again with the A in the graded unit. Now that HND is typically in civil engineering. If you're studying an HNC or an HND in built environment or construction, then depending on the units that you're taking, those points of entry would likely apply to you. When you join in year 2 and year 3, you're joining both the BEng and the MEng together. Progression to the 5th year of the MEng very much depends on your 4th year performance, not really what you're leaving college with. Okay, the bulk of our students do come into 1st year, but we get direct entrance from the colleges coming into 2nd and 3rd year. Conscious I'm taking a little bit longer than I thought, so let me just skip through these because Sam had spoken about the study abroad opportunities. Civil engineering is taught both at our Dubai and Malaysia campus, as well as Edinburgh. So it's perfect if you want to study 1 semester or 2 semesters at Dubai or Malaysia. It's part of your degree, no problem at all. So you can study abroad, or also at any of the partner institutions. And again, Sam had mentioned this. So whether you want to study at a university in Europe or North America, the opportunity is also there. So I'll thank you at that point, and I'll pause, and I'm going to see if I can skillfully return. Let me just check that I've returned and stopped the sharing. So hopefully that's okay. What I was proposing to do was invite some of our students to speak now about their own experience. We've got Ross, and we've got Chloe, and we've got Fraser, who are with us. Now, Ross and Chloe have made little video clips. So with their permission, I'll just show each of these video clips, and then Fraser, I'll invite you to just speak live to camera. He's giving me a thumbs up, so that's great. Okay.
Hello, my name is Ross Scott, and today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my experience coming from college to university. This is just a little bit of an introduction to myself. I'm a direct entry student currently studying civil engineering here at Heriot-Watt in year 2. I previously attended Edinburgh College down at the Grantas campus last year, where I undertook a HNC in civil engineering, being more or less the equivalent to what would have been taught here at university in the 1st year of the course I'm on. The next slide is so I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the differences that I've found between college and university. The first point I'd like to make is teaching and learning. At university, you're more on your own, so it's entirely up to you how you choose to spend your time here at university, and get to know who you are in the same way you most likely got to know your college lecturers quite well. The reason for this being, of course, university lecturers will potentially have up to hundreds and hundreds of students, so they're not really going to pay attention to if, let's say, you didn't attend a lecture or you were unable to submit an assignment or a piece of coursework, so they're not really going to chase you up on that sort of stuff. However, they are there to answer any questions you may have regarding the course or subject you're teaching, and they're hopefully as approachable as your college lectures. This next point, of course, isn't the reason why I chose to go to university, nor is it the reason why I chose to study civil engineering here at Heriot-Watt, although I do feel it is important to find a bit of balance between the work and social life. And I feel that at university that there's been far more opportunities to get involved and make friends, regardless of what's going on right now with the current state of the world, with a wide range of sports and societies to participate in. And to put into perspective from my experience, I feel that in my first week at university, I got to know more people than I did over the course of a year at college. And of course, that's just my experience. Yours may differ. How did I feel going into second year of my course? I did, of course, have concerns about how I might cope in comparison to those who have already been there at Heriot-Watt for the past year on the course I'm joining, and considering, of course, I'm entering at a much later point. So there were concerns. However, over these past 2 months, despite finding my course very demanding in terms of workload, with all the support and guidance I am receiving, I'm very much enjoying my time here at Heriot-Watt. My advice to current college students or the next generation: first of all, you can do this. This path is not impossible, as I once thought myself not so long ago when I was applying back in December to Heriot-Watt University. Remember to prioritize your studies, so don't leave work to the last minute. And you will find here at university many other direct entry students. This is a common route and path, and I got to know quite a few people in my first week at university who had also just joined the course I'm on as well, so just be on the lookout. So some final thoughts and info I feel are useful to know. Meet your deadlines. Extensions can really only be granted under very specific circumstances, and use the opportunity in lectures to ask your lecturers any questions or query, because outside of the time that they have allocated every week to teaching the course you're on, it's going to be quite hard to get hold of them. So of course you can't email them, but remember they do get hundreds of emails a day, so there's no guarantee that they'll immediately respond. So just something to consider. And that was my experience from going from college to university. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Chloe. I studied at Edinburgh College at the Grantham campus and was a direct entry into year 2 of the MEng Structural Engineering with Architectural Design degree at Heriot-Watt University. I'd say the biggest difference between college and university for me was just the size of the classes, really. Less than 20 students at college compared to 70 to 100 students at university. So very, very different ratio of students to staff. And a lot of independent work at college compared to a lot more group work at uni. And this year, with everything being online, it's not only group work, but it's collaborative projects with students from other courses and even from other countries, such as Dubai and Malaysia for part of this year. So it's quite different, quite exciting, and new experiences all round. Direct entry into year 2 went smoothly. I think it's all set up really well. For the units and courses, there was a little bit of crossover. So year 1 of the HNC civil engineering course is fairly intensive. You cover a huge range of subjects, and a couple of those in year 1 of the HNC I'm now about to cover at university in 3rd year. But the way the courses are taught are quite different. So you might be covering some of the same theory, but it will probably be taught in a different way. You'll probably have different kinds of projects and tasks and exercises to do. So it doesn't feel too much like going over old ground. It feels more like reinforcing learning than anything else. and new people. So I guess you're going into a course where everybody's known each other for a year. So it's just a case of trying to find out who everyone is, finding out where you fit in. For me, that sort of follows into tips for new students, really. Join group chats. What's helped was being parts of those group projects, meeting new people, getting involved in societies and events, especially social ones, even more crucial now that everything's banned. But yeah, and just asking, not being afraid to ask for help, not being afraid to talk to tutors if you're unsure about something, whether that's current tutors or, for me, I approached university staff in advance of applying for the degree just to ask for some advice, make sure I was on the right track for where I wanted to end up. And it doesn't have to be humbling, it's just a case of making sure you're in a good position to make the right choices further down the line. And that all worked out. In terms of going further than that, the biggest, most resounding piece of advice I've heard from people, especially from potential employers, is just to focus on what you really want from what you're doing. So enthusiasm, willingness to learn, like an actual passion for the topic you're studying is really what it's all about. So if you know you want to be heading in a certain direction, it doesn't matter if you're really sort of focused on a particular job or a particular qualification. It's just that you want to be in that field and you love what you do and you want to contribute in some way. That's what's going to come across. So hopefully you're able to find the information you need. Just ask. It's all going to work out. Good luck.
That should hopefully return to the screen. First of all, I'd like to thank both Ross and Chloe for putting the videos together. I think they were very clear, very passionate, in fact, and very clear at explaining their own experiences. Fraser, I apologise, I didn't give you enough notification to prepare a video, but you've very kindly turned up. If I may turn to you, Fraser, now. Do you want to say a few words about your experiences? Thank you.
Hi guys, so I joined Heriot-Watt after studying a HNC and I was a direct entrant into second year. I think for me the transition, the biggest part of it was really getting used to doing like the Harvard referencing and how like meeting the standards that university requires compared to college. But the good thing is the university offers a lot of support in terms of learning how to do Harvard referencing and stuff like that. So when you join, there will be the options to join things called power hours and stuff like that. That will teach you how to use Harvard referencing in your studies. I think that the other two covered most of what I would have said, but one thing I would like to add, and when you join Heriot-Watt, don't waste time in looking for placements when you join. Because I missed the boat on that, and there was other people in my course that did apply for placements and they got them. Personally, I felt that I was too caught up in trying to adapt to university, but everything will fall into place for you, especially if you just turn up to lectures and stuff like that. Definitely don't miss out on trying to apply for placements and stuff like that, because even though you're a direct entrant, you're still definitely in the running for getting those placements and stuff like that. So I never had much time to prepare for this, but I'd be happy to take any questions. That's all I've got to say for now.
Thank you very much, Fraser. I won't just leave you to take all the questions. In fact, I was going to open up, but before I was going to do that, I was just going to offer Chloe or Ross if there was anything else they wished to add. Your videos I thought were brilliant, but just if there was anything else you wished to add, else we can go over straight to the questions. We're okay, yeah. Okay, so questions. Where will I see the questions anywhere? Are there any questions to be posed?
There have been some questions that have come in, Ian, so I'll just go through them, and if people have got questions based on, you know, kind of the students' experiences or anything that Ian said, then go ahead and keep typing in that question box. I've got a couple that I think are more directed at you, Ian, first, if that's okay, and then we'll come on to the more kind of student-facing ones. So these are quite specific, so bear with me while I get my head around what's been asked. So there's somebody here that's saying they're leaning more towards structural engineering. What would be the benefits of going through the civil course rather than the structural, or rather than going straight onto the structural course, if that kind of makes sense? So I suppose it's a question of civil or structural.
And it makes perfect sense, and it's a fantastic question. And there's an enormous safety net, and the enormous safety net is that the first 3 years of the 2 degrees are common. So you don't actually have to make a choice before you join the university. You kind of make your choice towards the end of year 3. Now, if you're finishing an HND, that means that you're going into year 3 directly. So you've probably got to start thinking fairly swiftly. But in semester 1 of year 3, you'll be doing some heavy civil engineering type subjects, and you'll be doing some slightly advanced structural engineering subjects. So you'll start to get an awareness, but more importantly, you'll start to get to know the staff. And you'll, in addition to a personal tutor, you'll have your own personal tutor. You will get to know the structural engineering lecturers, the water engineering lecturers, the geotechnical engineering lecturer, and you'll get to the opportunity to speak and to ask these professionals questions. You also, and Fraser I'm sure will up his game for the summer placement next year, you get the chance to do the summer placement between year 3 and 4 or between year 2 and 3, and you might choose to try and work in structural engineering or in civil engineering. So that opens your eyes. So all of these sort of opportunities exist for you to expose yourself, if you like, to civil or structural, and then to help you make that decision towards the end of year 3, which 4th year optional subjects you would wish to take. So I suppose to sum up, the message is don't worry too much about it during the application stage, civil or structural. It'll become quite clear what your preference is as you progress through the course. And again, after all of my answers, I'll invite any of the students if they wish to comment to that. I know you're all fairly early years through the degree, but if there's anything anybody wishes to add, just jump in. We're okay? We're all good. Okay, well, hopefully that helped answer the question.
Yep, thank you very much, Ian. Just to double check, there was none of the students that wanted to give me a wave if you did want to comment at all on any of those. No, that's fine, no problem. So I'll move on to the next question. So this is a kind of workload question. Is the workload greater in civil compared to structural as you have more ground to cover?
Is that a pun?
I like to think so.
That's my subject area. Workload, 1 degree versus the other. I actually think they are much of a muchness. The workload is probably the same regardless of which degree. What you might probably find is that the structural engineering subjects, and Chloe, you mentioned you're on the structural route, in later years they become much more numerical in nature. So you'll get into fairly advanced numerical techniques such as finite element analysis and stress analysis of materials, and that's quite numerical in nature. You know, it's quite much more numerical perhaps than maybe environmental engineering or sustainable development, which is a little bit more policy based, and so the sort of the civil versus structural in terms of, well, they're both numerical, but the structural engineering I'd probably say is more numerical than the civils in later years. But it's kind of what you make of it, because you choose the options, you choose the dissertation. Even a structural engineer might want to do something, a dissertation that might be more around the policy of carbon footprints. You know, rather than doing number crunching design as part of the dissertation, they might be looking at more of the United Nations development goals and what's the sustainable. What's the impact on the climate, if you like, of this construction, which is much more philosophical type discussion, type dissertation. So it's what you make of it. But I would say in terms of workload, if you want to get a first-class honours in civil engineering or a first-class honours in structural engineering, it's the same level of workload, I would say, and the same amount of effort. Again, my fellow students that are here, anything you would wish to add? Chloe, you have your hand up.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Just to add, I think you've mentioned options. That's all correct. I think the structural course maybe has a few less in later years, just because it's more focused in on that specialism. But as Ian says, it's what you make of it. So.
Thanks, Chloe. Yeah, you're right, because if you're on the structural engineering route, some of the options become cores. Yeah, you must do this if you're wanting the structural engineering degree. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Great stuff. I'll move on to the next question then that's come in. I kind of feel like this is probably more directed at the students, so they can let me know who is quite keen to answer this. Ian has sort of touched on this, but it's how does the style of teaching and study differ from being at college? So I don't know if I've got a volunteer who is willing to kind of answer that from our lovely students. Oh, I think I've got Fraser there, so I'll pop you on screen, Fraser, and you go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, so for me, I didn't see a huge difference in terms of the style of teaching, because it's pretty much similar to college in that you have lectures set times every week. The one biggest variance I would say is you have a bit more studying outside of the lectures to do. So you've still got to turn up to class and pay attention to your lectures and take notes and stuff like that. The only difference for me was a bigger workload in terms of self-study. But there's far more support available at university as well. You know, if you're struggling or anything like that, then there's more support there and everything ends up all right. So that would be the things I would say about that.
Great, thanks very much. Anyone else want to comment with anything from carrying on from Fraser's point, either of the students? No, we're all good. I'll just flick back to Ian and I'll just check if there's been any other questions. I think those are the main ones that we've had just at the moment, but I don't know if anybody has got anything that they want to add, anything they feel that they've not had a chance to say at all, or if you've got anything you want to finish up with at all, Ian.
Yeah, I'll say a couple of words. Just something that I mentioned in my presentation, and this is genuine. You know, I've been in higher education for more years than I could care to admit, but about 20 odd years. And honestly, the graduates that leave the university, the ones that are most highly sought after, are often those that started at college. So it's that practical. It's more than just practical skills you learn in a college diploma or certificate, of course, but that there's something, there's an awareness of a different educational way, application of that knowledge, I think, more at the college sector. You then come to the university and you top up that sort of informed knowledge with the theory and maybe a bit more heavy duty fundamentals and things like that. And together you become a much more well-rounded engineer. And honestly, a lot of our college to university graduates are really highly sought after. And I could rattle off a dozen names of graduates that I keep in contact with. Some of them left Edinburgh College, it was Telford College back then, 15 years ago. They came through, they got a degree. They're now very senior practicing engineers, and it can be the same for anybody that's tuning in just now. So that's a genuine thing. And again, just another point, just to repeat that I'd mentioned in my presentation, is that from my point, and thankfully I think all of our students have agreed the same, I've never really seen a college student struggle with the transition. I think college prepares you well for university, actually. So that pathway from college to university is a good thing. So there's a sort of message of reassurance out there for anybody who's in two minds about thinking about college, thinking about coming to university from college. Yeah, go for it. You've seen and heard the students tonight, and I think we would all concur. It really opens up new opportunities for you, and you will cope. I'm quite sure. And I'm sure maybe Pat, you would naturally go on to talk about being open for further inquiries at later dates. What I would say to anybody that's got any questions after this session, they can easily contact the university, and we'll certainly answer any questions by email. And then hopefully we'll all be allowed back onto campus at some point, and we'll welcome you all onto the campus to show you around. Thank you.
Absolutely, Ian, and we'll be giving out the email address at the end, and I'm presuming that you'd be happy if we got specific questions that we pass that on. We've actually just had one more question that's just popped up. It's just about what are the main things that you would look for in an applicant for civil engineering, and I suppose that my sort of follow-up for that would be that, you know, in the current circumstances, maybe people aren't able to do things like work experience or anything like that. Any sort of hints or tips or anything that would be good for people to do?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the, well, Fraser, sorry, did you have your hand up? Do you want to come in, Fraser? Yeah, please do. Can we put Fraser on?
One thing I would say, Heriot-Watt has an amazing support service for students looking to apply for any placements or graduate jobs. So if you make a CV and you're applying for a placement or a graduate job of any kind, they have appointments available to all students at any time, where you can send them your CV and they will help you create a CV that's ready for that would make an employer basically invite you for an interview. And I can talk about this from first-hand experience, because I think it was last year I was applying for placements, and I sent in my CV and they said, look, like 30% of this is a load of rubbish. Like, you know, why are you including this in your CV? And it's hard as an undergraduate when you're trying to look for jobs when you're starting out, because you don't really know what employers are looking for. But having that support there from the university helped me secure jobs. So if it wasn't for the support that the university offers, I probably wouldn't have done as well in my later years of education and securing jobs. So like the support that's available would help you with, you know, like the question that you've asked. There's plenty support available for you when you look for jobs. And that's what I was saying earlier on. When you join for your second or your third year, don't waste time. You should, virtually in your first or second month of joining the university, you should be looking for placements. And I would say Grad Cracker, have a look on there and make your CV, send it to the student services. They'll tell you where you're going wrong and you'll get a placement. Absolutely. I would encourage anybody that's watching right now to join Heriot-Watt, because it's a great uni.
You know, we're not even paying them. Thank you very much, Fraser. Thank you for that. I think just to top off that, in terms of the sort of the academic application for somebody who's, you know, what are we looking for to, you know, for an entry? It's the graded unit becomes very, very important in all of this. You know, an A in the graded unit, whether you've gone to the HNC for year 2 entry or for HND into year 3. If you are MD20 or first in the house to university, then the B in the graded unit starts to become an option. But the graded unit is an important one to focus on. So if you know, that's the unit at college to really work hard on. Ross has got his hand up, and Chloe. So Ross first, perhaps.
So just you were mentioning there, of course, the graded unit, and of course I joined this year into second year, so I just previously done a graded unit at the beginning of the year, and from my experience, it's essentially, for me, it prepares for when it comes time to the later years at Heriot-Watt in degree course when you're obviously assigned with a dissertation, which obviously in the first and second year at Heriot-Watt for students already there, they're not getting any sort of like graded unit or dissertation. So I feel from my experience that the graded unit is essentially that will come back to me when I'm assigned with my dissertation when it comes to third year. And the other point I'd like to also mention, and this is a unique thing with what's been going on this year. So when I first started coming to Heriot-Watt University and I was getting to know people in the course, according to what they had said, when this sort of whole COVID situation hit us in March, I heard that sort of their course had sort of been stopped, and obviously no exams or any additional work to do. Whilst with obviously because I was aiming to get into university that year, I was essentially working at home, carrying on with the graded unit right up to the middle of June. So which has been very helpful in preparing me for the whole working at home environment, because this is likely to be the scenario for, well, at least until the end of this academic year. So, and when it comes, because I was working up to June, essentially when it came to September, I felt it was a lot easier to more get back into the work environment and the course civil engineering, and especially with what I've found with the subjects being taught is that I've sort of had a bit of a head start with some topics. For example, if there are any students watching and you're on the undertaking HNC or have undertaken a HNC, you would have covered 2 geotechnical modules in your first and second semester, which from what I've gathered, I believe is not even taught until the third year at Heriot-Watt University. So that's really going to come back to me when it does come time going into the third year of the degree course. And because I think as Ian said at the beginning of this session, you cover in your HNC, and if you undertake a HND, a more broader field of civil engineering, because in my HNC we had about I think 8 courses or subjects per semester, so that's a total of 16 by the end of the first year HNC. So it's really covering a broader field. So in transitioning to Heriot-Watt, whether that's second year after HNC or a third year after the HND, you're really going to settle in quite quickly, because you've got that broad field of discipline within civil engineering. So
thanks very much for that, Ross. That's very valuable words indeed. Chloe, you also had your hand up.
Hiya. Just to quickly echo what Ross has just said as well, we're not the only ones that have said you're going to feel ahead in some areas, maybe a bit behind in others, but overall it really does blend well together. And Ian, when you mentioned the graded unit, just flashbacks, I just wanted to say I remember it's obviously quite an intense project. It covers all of the units you'll have just done. There were students, so I was really set on getting into uni. I did all right, got the grades, successful application, fine. There were people who were incredibly stressed and worried. They didn't think they were going to get that A. They really wanted to go from the HNC, but they stayed on at college, did the HND, and they're now on the same course as me in third year, and they're doing great. So yeah, if you want to go from the HNC straight into uni, go for it. But if you don't think you're going to quite get it, or if you think, well, actually, you know what, I want to do the second year at college and then go straight into third year, that's a great option as well. So yeah, sort of weigh up your options. By all means, put your application in through UCAS or whatever, just get the ball rolling. But you're not shut off from either avenue. If you change your mind or if things don't work out with a graded unit, the door doesn't close. It just means you're going a slightly different route. So yeah, keep trying.
Thank you very much, Chloe. Additional wise words indeed. Conscious of the time, so I'm just going to pass back to Sam now. Before I do that, once again, thank you very much, Fraser, Ross, Chloe, for your input. That's been very valuable indeed. I'll pass back to you in the studio, Sam.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thank you again, Chloe, Ross, Fraser, and also thank you to Ian. That was really exciting, insightful information, and hopefully it inspired you further to look at civil engineering at Heriot-Watt. We'll now move on, and I will pass over to Rachel Whittington, and Rachel is going to talk more about that transition from college to university and the sort of support and learning that some of our students have touched on already. So I'll pass over to Rachel just now.
Hi everyone, I hope you're all safe and well this evening. So yes, thank you for the introduction. Like I say, I'm a learning advisor and liaison librarian for the UK campuses for Heriot-Watt, one of a team. And I'm just going to talk a bit about, very, very briefly about the differences, because like I say, it's already been fantastically covered beforehand. I'm also going to talk about then the support that's available at Heriot-Watt as well. So I'm just going to hopefully be able to share my slides. There we go. So hopefully you can all see that now. So as we've already said, studying at university is a bit more focused on, like I say, the independent learning, managing your own workload. Classes act a bit more like a roadmap kind of at university. So they'll give you the basics, the information that you need, kind of an introduction to subject areas, but you'll then be expected to go off and do your own research in those areas, find your own examples, find your own kind of references and material. But as again the others have already said, you know, there is a huge amount of support available, as well as kind of likening, like I say, research to kind of being a research landscape, an open road, and being given a roadmap to go and navigate it, to be able to find what you need in the research area. There's also a bit like thinking of it as like, you know, being the captain of your own ship now. You know, you're in charge of where you go, you're in charge of the work that you do, and as much or as little work as you do will, you know, reflect on your success. However, we don't suddenly expect you to know how to sail. We're not just dropping you into this with no support or anything. Also, Ian as well mentioned, you know, about the subject matter kind of being deeper and kind of much more rigorous assessment. Typically writing at university, producing kind of essays, reports, etc. What markers generally are looking for would be things like providing informed opinions. So answering an essay question or whatever, providing your own input on that. But making sure that they are informed, and that means using authoritative and appropriate information sources to back up any claims that you're making. And that's where I think that, you know, Fraser mentioned about referencing and using Harvard referencing a lot more than you may have done at college. But overall, we're expecting you to demonstrate originality, and that doesn't mean that you have to be the first person ever to have come up with something or come up with a conclusion. If you're a class of however many students all answering the same essay question, the chances that you come to the same conclusion can be relatively high. What we mean by originality in the academic context is that you can weigh up opposing opinions, you can go away, you can look at that evidence, and you can come to your own conclusion. You've not been spoon-fed an answer. So I have these general kind of 5 top tips that I always tell every student, and that would hopefully make it'll be hopefully maybe useful for you now as a college student, but would also be useful for you when you start university as well. So first of all, when you're looking at when you can study and fit in the work, make sure you spread out your work on particular topics over the week. 5 hours on a topic spread over the week is a lot more effective than doing it in one block, than studying for 5 hours in one block. That's at least what a lot of the current research is suggesting on kind of learning and cognitive psychology. It can also be quite difficult to find the time to study and get used to all of this kind of independent study. And you know, you might have to go away and do a lot more, like you say, by yourself. But that's not to say that you can't make the most of just having little bits of time to study in. What I always suggest is breaking up any sessions that you have for studying into kind of small blocks. And there is a technique called the Pomodoro technique that I always recommend. Pomodoro is Italian for tomato, and it's named after the tomato oven timers that you often get, or egg timers, much like the little cartoon image on this slide. And the idea behind the Pomodoro technique is that literally you just set the timer for however much time you tend to study for. So usually we say 30 minutes, but if your attention span only lasts for 15 minutes, then set the timer for 15 minutes. Work solidly for those 15 minutes on a topic, and then take a break, and then repeat. Breaks are a hugely important part of studying as well, not just because they leave you kind of, you know, refreshed with more energy, but also like I say, the current research tends to show that if you focus on something intently for a certain amount of time, so if you're trying to work out a problem, if you're trying to understand a concept, when you step away from that and take a break and go and do something else completely different, your brain is still working on trying to understand that problem or solve that problem and understand that concept in the background. So you're still working and using your time effectively by taking breaks. To get the most out of kind of study sessions and those blocks of time as well, set yourself SMART goals for your study. So either for a study session, for the day, for the week, for the month, you know, however you like to kind of plan and sort out your time. SMART goals are ones that are specific. So they're on a particular thing or topic, or rather than just being very general, they're on one particular thing. Measurable, so you can tell you've achieved it. Achievable, so given, you know, the time that you've got, your skill set, the materials, etc., that you have, that you'll actually be able to achieve it in the time that you set. Relevant, you know, for your overall personal, career, or study goals. And timely, so there's a set amount of time that they'll be done in. So, for example, if I were to say between 10 and 11 a.m. tomorrow, I am going to read and make notes on 5 articles. That would be a SMART goal, because I can tell if I've achieved it or not. It's achievable for me and my skill set. It's relevant for, you know, whatever study goals I had, and it's a set amount of time that it'd occur in. Also, when you're studying, mix up your study methods. Don't just, like say, write out notes from a book or something like that. Experiment with images and drawing and pattern diagrams or mind maps. Stuff to just kind of change how the information looks and make it more more visual, more appealing, and more memorable for you. And there's also that, you know, a huge number of different memory tricks as well. For example, if you're revising for exams, that can help. And lastly, as well, always say talk about your work with other people. You know, when you start, there'll be opportunities hopefully to meet other students on your course, to form study groups with. But it doesn't even necessarily have to be people who are studying the same course as you. You get a huge amount of benefit by verbally having to explain information to another person. It can help you see problems from a different perspective if you're struggling to understand something or solve a problem. It can help you to remember concepts and information more as well. There's just a huge benefit to being able to talk. And we have tools available, you know, if we are still doing a lot more online learning kind of next academic year, then, you know, we have the tools available to facilitate that as well. And you don't even have to talk to other people to get the most benefit out of talking. There's in computer science, programmers use a method called rubber duck debugging to kind of understand what's going wrong with codes for their programs. And rubber duck debugging is literally just came about from a book called The Pragmatic Programmer, I think. And they just mentioned the idea that rather than talking to colleagues, they would have a little rubber duck or another inanimate object like a plant or something on their desk. And if there was something going wrong with the code, then they'd explain what the program was supposed to do, and then they'd explain the code line by line until the issue would jump out at them. And like I say, it's just about exploring things from different angles. And like I say, you're not just left to your own devices completely. There is support available for you to help you develop your skills, both your academic skills and, like I say, careers for employability skills and stuff as well. On the study support side, there's one-to-one appointments that you can make with people. So if you want to chat about your specific circumstances and kind of get specific kind of tailored advice, you can book appointments with people. You can also, there's a lot of online material, and there's also webinars and classes that you can attend as well. So the half of my role that is as a liaison librarian, like I say, there's a liaison librarian for each school, and the liaison librarians help with finding the best information for assignments, so helping you to evaluate information sources and research and use the databases and tools that we have most efficiently and effectively. So for example, Discovery is in the screenshot here is our library catalogue tool that searches physical items in the library, but also electronic articles as well. But there's a whole range of databases as well that's useful for your subject area that isn't covered by Discovery. And that's what the subject librarians help with. Sorry, liaison librarians help with. And like I say, as Fraser pointed out, we also help with citing and referencing and using EndNote, which is a reference management tool that can help you with citing and referencing. If you use Microsoft Word when you're writing your assignments, you can use EndNote to insert your citation and it'll format the reference for you at the end. You still need to know how to cite and reference because there may be mistakes, information in the wrong fields or something, but it can save you a lot of time. And we run sessions on kind of how to use that software, which you get as a Heriot-Watt student, you'll have access to. And I've just put some links at the bottom there to the subject guide for civil and structural engineering. That has a lot more guidance information and kind of you can see some of the advice and the stuff that the liaison librarian for Aegis could support you with. And the guide for more information about EndNote if you're curious about how that might help when you're a student here. And the other half of my role is I'm a learning advisor. So I also help with kind of academic writing and assignments, reading and note taking, exams and revision strategies, study strategies, presentation skills, how to make the most and get the best out of group work. Basically any kind of study skill that isn't covered as part of necessarily as part of your course, I help with. And there's a guide there, the Academic Study Skills Guide. And that's got kind of top tips. It's got some documents to download. It's got links to other kind of resources and books that we have and stuff, as well as links to contact the learning advisor. And like I say, for both liaison librarians and learning advisors, we do one-to-one appointments, but also we go into classes and teach. And we also teach separately as part of something called the Skills Hub, which was formerly known as the Power Hours. So thank you for mentioning that earlier, Fraser. The Power Hours became Skills Hub this semester because we're trying to bring in a lot more material and support into this. So the Academic Study Skills Guide that I linked to on the previous slide is gradually being absorbed into this Skills Hub guide instead. And this is just an area where, there's lots of interactive tutorials, videos, activities, etc. Other links to other resources again, but also links to sign up to live webinars each semester as well. So you can get live support with, like I say, essay writing, report writing, citing and referencing, etc. And finally, of course, there are other services that can help as well. Like I say, there's a huge range of support. The Student Wellbeing Service, for example, covers like the Student Success Advisors, those recent graduates. You've got the Student Union Advice Hub as well to provide support. Your personal tutors are a fantastic source of support as well when you're when studying. And of course, I haven't even mentioned here things like the Careers Service and stuff as well for employability skills. So that was everything that I just wanted to cover in this. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them, or like I say, pass them on at a later time.
Thanks very much, Rachel. We did just have one very quick question, I think, which was just around whether those resources that you shared in terms of the web addresses, are they all available to non-current students? So somebody wanting to get ahead of the game, I think.
Great question. Yes and no. Some of basically the links are all available to view. You can all go, you can look at all of them, but a lot of the resources linked to that, for example, some of the videos and stuff in the Skills Hub, that sort of thing, I think you would need a Heriot-Watt username and password. But things like the Academic Study Skills Guide, that's all open and free. Any videos on there, anyone can watch. All the links to other resources, they're all freely available online resources for the most part. So yeah, basically just have a browse, click and see what you can and can't access. And like I say, if you've got any questions or anything about any of the material and stuff on there as well, like I say, please do send an email or something later on, and I'm happy to, like I say, take any questions or answer anything that people may want to know more about.
That's great. Thanks very much, Rachel. Like I say, I think somebody just trying to get ahead of the game there, which I think is really good to see.
Absolutely.
So, yes, absolutely. So I'm just going to move on now, and I'm just going to cover my presentation, which is just around entry requirements and how to apply. So just a few more minutes and a few more bits of information, some of which you might have seen some of, but just to kind of give you a bit of an idea of some of the things that are important at this kind of stage. So my first one is just to cover a little bit more about articulation and what we actually mean by that term. So I've got this wee diagram up just on your screen at the moment that shows you some of the routes into university. So this is referring to going from the left, so using school and school qualifications as an entry into university, and on the right using college qualifications with a university in the middle. And you can see that you can use, obviously, as you probably know, highers to get into a degree in year 1 and advanced highers to get into a degree into year 2. But also with college, you can use your HNC to get into year 2 and your HND to get into year 3. And we call that articulation. So if I mention that term, that's all I am talking about. I'm talking about that direct entry. So you've got that option to go to college and then go into university, but come in at advanced entry level. And if you're somebody who is returning to education and you're doing an access course, then we've got that listed as well, and that would be your year 1 entry. So my next slide is about the entry requirements that we would look for the civil engineering and the structural engineering courses. Now, Ian mentioned this briefly earlier on, so I am just recapping this information just so that you know. So this is across all of our BEng, MEng, civil engineering and structural engineering courses. If you are an access course student and you're doing a SWAP access course, you have got a progression route that has already been agreed with SWAP and the university to get you into first year. You can see more about the progression routes and which SWAP courses they are from on the SWAP website. They've got their little progression finder, but we would be asking for 3 Bs in the profile grades from your swap course, and for you to have completed all SCQF level 6 maths units. You'll see a bit of a theme with the maths units as I go through the entry requirements as well. So if you're looking at coming in for an access course into year 1, that's what we would look for, and you can see the specific swap access courses on the swap survey website. If you're looking at year 2 entry with a HNC, we look for an A in the graded unit, and we would need that to be, as Ian mentioned earlier on, in a relevant HNC, but the important element is that we need to see your maths at SCQF level 7. So you need to have been doing a HNC that includes SCQF level 7 maths. Similarly with 3rd year, a HND with an A and a B in the graded units over the 2 years that you've been doing that. Again, an irrelevant HND, and we're looking for the maths at the SCQF level 7 again. So it's really the maths level that we are particularly interested in when it comes to advanced entry for our civil and structural engineering degrees. If you're looking to use a HNC or a HND to get into different years, so maybe a HNC to get into 1st year, or maybe a HND to get into 2nd year, there's a bit more information on our website about the grades we would look for from those, but this is looking at our most direct entry routes available to you from those qualifications. So just a little bit to cover then about applying. I'm hoping that most people will be starting to become familiar with this if you've not already started. This is just a little recap of some information. So you obviously apply to university through the UCAS portal, and universities will look for these kinds of different things from you. So academic background, enthusiasm in your subject, range of skills and experience, clear, concise personal statement, supportive positive reference, and work experience where appropriate. So where do they look for that? They look for that as part of your application and as part of your personal statement. You've got a couple of deadlines to be aware of. So the 15th of January is the kind of final deadline for UCAS applications to make their way to the universities. However, I would draw your attention to the fact that as part of your UCAS application, you've not only got all the bits that you need to fill in and your personal statement to write, but you also need to have a reference as part of that application. So what you will need to do is you'll need to speak to your individual college to find out what their own internal deadline for you to get your part of your application over to them so that they can write you a reference and make sure that they get that application into the universities by the 15th of January. So that's why I've popped on a little note just there to say that colleges will have their own internal deadlines, and that is something that you need to bear in mind when you're leaving yourself enough time to apply. You can apply for a maximum of 5 courses, 5 different options, so they can be different courses, different universities, or a combination of the two as well. So you can't apply to loads and loads of different universities. You've got a maximum of 5 spaces on your UCAS application. I'll move on to talk very briefly about what kind of things you might want to consider including in your personal statement, just in case anybody is wondering what sort of things we might look for. I know we've had a little question about this already, so I'm sure there's a few people who are thinking about this at the moment. So we would like to see why you want to study why you want to study your chosen course. So why do you want to do civil engineering, structural engineering? What sort of things might you want to include? So that's not just to say, oh, I'm really passionate about civil engineering. We want to know what it is about civil engineering that you already know, what it is that you're looking forward to finding out about more. So really dig below the surface of your interest in that particular subject. We'd obviously like to see any work experience or subject specific experience, but this really depends on what you've had an opportunity to do. Your subject specific experience could just be that you've been on your own little site visit to the Queensferry Crossing or some kind of structure or some kind of place that has really kind of inspired you. So it doesn't necessarily have to be direct engineering work experience for that to still be really relevant and interesting to us and for you to include in your personal statement. One of the things that we're really keen on is transferable skills and giving us examples of those. So telling us a bit more about your team working skills, for example, an example of where you gain those team working skills, when you've worked as part of a group, when you have been doing something where you've needed to meet deadlines. All those kind of things are really important to include on your personal statement. We also would quite like to see your future plans. So what are you thinking of doing after university? And this just helps us to see that you've thought beyond the degree course. So we won't hold you to those future plans. It just helps us to see the whole picture of why you're applying. The top things to remember are to keep the content positive and relevant to the course you're applying to. So every time that you put something down, think, is it positive? Is it showing me in the best possible light? And is it relevant to my civil or structural engineering application? The sort of things to avoid then, inevitably, making sure that you are keeping all of your information in your personal statement as pertinent as possible. So do avoid poor wording and grammar. So make sure your personal statement reads well. Get someone else to proofread it for you. It's not marked on your wording and your grammar, but you know, the people who read these personal statements have to read an awful lot of them. So please make sure that it reads well and you come across in the best possible light. We would say to avoid quotes from other people, because even if you think it is really original, we can guarantee that that quote will have been used hundreds of times before. And also it's a personal statement, so don't waste the space on your personal statement by using words from other people. I've mentioned this one already, so overuse of cliches and the word passionate. So you're passionate about civil engineering, great. Tell us what it is that you're passionate about it, why you like it, why you're interested, and give us a bit more detail, a bit more depth on that. Try to avoid any negative comments or excuses. That doesn't mean to say that you can't tell us about adversity that you've overcome or give us some background on, you know, your kind of journey to date, but try to avoid saying I didn't get an opportunity to do this because of something and just kind of passing that off with excuses. We'd also say trying to be funny is probably a no-no in a personal statement. It might not come across and translate, and not all admissions officers necessarily have your sense of humour. We'd also say to avoid irrelevant personal facts, so use what we would call the so what rule. So the so what rule is where everything that you write in your personal statement, you ask yourself the question, so what? So why would an admissions officer want to know this information about me? So you can go through your personal statement and see whether it is all relevant and does actually make sense to be there. And the bottom one should hopefully be fairly self-explanatory. Plagiarism, lies or exaggeration. We don't want to see anything that is not true on your personal statement. It's about you and what you've done, and that will be absolutely fine. We don't need any sort of stories about things that you haven't done. So our sort of top 5 tips then for personal statements. Remember that you've only got 47 lines, 4,000 characters. So really not much space at all once you start writing. So make it all count. So make sure that it's your own words and you're getting across you a little bit more about you in your personal statement. Give examples of your own experiences and do try to avoid starting every sentence with I. It's very tempting to do that because obviously you're talking about yourself in your personal statement, but it does read better if you can kind of mix up your sentence structure a little bit. Do make sure that you proofread it. Don't just rely on spell check to pick up all your mistakes because it doesn't always do that. So proofread it, and if you can get somebody else to proofread it too, excellent. You'll need to do a few drafts with your personal statement. That's completely normal. And do make sure you leave yourself enough time to get everything done. I am not the best person to describe this because often I leave things to the last minute, but I always regret it. So I would say, please make sure that you leave yourself enough time to get everything completed and give yourself time to do that in a proper manner rather than having to rush. I'll just touch on the references before we finish up. So an academic reference is part of your application, as I've already said, so it's part of that deadline as well that you need to meet. You're welcome to discuss with your college lecturer or tutor any points that you would like to be included. So if you've got some background information that you would like to be included on your application, then please do feel free to discuss that with your lecturer. Extenuating circumstances or adverse situations impacting on your study can also be included, as they can be included included in your personal statement as well. If you want to include information about any disability or any support needs, there is actually a separate space on the UCAS application where you can do that. So it doesn't have to necessarily be mentioned in your personal statement or your reference, but of course you're more than welcome to do that if you think it would be helpful. And as I've said before, leave your referee enough time to complete your reference so that they are also not rushing and they can do the best possible job that they need to in order to get you a good reference and potentially, hopefully, a place. So just to finish up, I'll run through a few of the key dates. So I've mentioned that 15th of January deadline already. So that's the deadline for all courses, except the ones that have got the earlier October deadline and some art and design courses. It's not really relevant to us today for civil and structural engineering. The next important date is the 31st of March, and that's when universities will aim to have made their decisions for applications by, if they've been received by the 15th of January. It's also the next kind of deadline is the 5th of May. So this is a deadline for you where it's your deadline for responding to offers. So replies, whether you've got a firm place or insurance, and declining all your other offers. So you do need to make a choice. Even if you've got loads and loads of lovely offers, you need to decide which one's going to be a firm one and which kind of one is going to be your insurance one, and then decline your other offers. And then into August, that's when Scottish clearing starts. So if you're sitting without a university place and you'd still like to go on to university, clearing is where you can get in touch with the individual universities to see if they have any remaining spaces. So that is another part of the process and something else that you're able to do if you need to, dependent on where you're at that stage. So that's my sort of whistle stop tour through the kind of application process. But again, as we've been saying all evening, if you've got any questions, then feel free to ask. I'll just go over the contact details just on this slide before I see if there are any questions. Our email address, WP, which stands for Wine and Participation, at hw.ac.uk is where you can get us for any questions if you think of anything after the event. We've also got some pages on our website which are specifically for students who are coming from college, so you can find those just under our WP pages on our website. And then there's some more information, videos, presentations and things under our civil and structural engineering pages on our website as well. So those are just what those links are. But for now, I will stop sharing my presentation and I will see if there are any other questions that have come in or whether we are about to finish up. Any questions come in, Sam, while I've been speaking?
Yeah, sorry, I'm sleeping there. Yeah, we had a question that potentially Ian might be able to answer, and that's can you still get accredited if you were to study part of the degree abroad?
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah. Good question. And the answer is absolutely yes. It's the same degree that we offer at the 3 campuses. And regardless of campus, the degree is fully accredited. So if you study 1 semester or 2 semesters abroad, your degree will still be fully accredited. Yeah, good question though. Somebody's thinking. That's good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there any more? We've got one more, which was around accommodation and what sort of prices and what accommodation was like on campus. So potentially Pat maybe could answer that one.
Forgot to unmute my mic there. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So in terms of accommodation, we've got a number of different options and you can find details of all of those options on our website. So for 2020, the prices for our accommodation range between £144 per week to £179 per week. So the difference in price reflects what you were getting in terms of your accommodation. So the cheaper end of the accommodation is more traditional halls, and the more expensive end of the accommodation is sharing your kitchen space with less people and in more contemporary modern halls. So have a little look on our website. You can do some nice 360-degree tours of the accommodation and pick which bedroom you would like on campus. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Last chance for any other questions if people type them in just now, and like we said, any questions that come in after the event, then we'll definitely get them to Ian and Pat and Rachel to be able to answer those questions. So looks like there's not any more for just now. So I will thank Ian, Chloe, Fraser, Ross, Rachel and Pat for their contributions this evening. It was a really fantastic event, and hopefully it has inspired you to consider civil engineering or structural engineering at Heriot-Watt University. And like we said, if you have any further questions, please get in touch and we'll hopefully be able to answer them. So thank you very much for coming, and I will sign off now. Cheers. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.